The conference room door opened at exactly 9:15 a.m. on Monday morning, and three people in matching navy suits walked into my life carrying leather portfolios that would change everything. The lead woman extended her hand with the kind of confidence that comes from having just written a check with 7 zeros. Miss Chen, I'm Rebecca Walsh from Meridian Capital. We're here about the acquisition. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at her perfectly manicured hand, remembering my cousin Danny's words from just 4 days ago. Riley, face it, nobody's going to pay real money for an app that helps people organize their closets. It's not exactly revolutionary technology. The memory of Easter dinner crashed over me like a wave. My entire extended family gathered around my aunt's dining table, picking apart my business like vultures on roadkill, while I sat there defending something they couldn't even be bothered to understand. 4 months earlier, I'd been riding high on what I thought was the beginning of something incredible. StyleSync wasn't just another organization app. I'd spent 3 years developing machine learning algorithms that could analyze clothing photos, track wearing patterns, suggest outfit combinations, and even predict fashion trends based on user behavior. The beta testing had been phenomenal. Users were spending an average of 43 minutes per day on the platform, and our retention rates were through the roof. But try explaining machine learning to Uncle Frank, who still thinks smartphones are a conspiracy to steal his personal information. Try describing predictive analytics to Aunt Margaret, whose idea of organization is throwing everything into junk drawers. Try convincing anyone at that Easter table that a digital wardrobe assistant could be worth millions when they can't even figure out how to use Netflix without calling their kids for help. The invitation had come from my cousin Jessica, as it did every year. Easter dinner at Mom's, 2 o'clock sharp. Bring that famous chocolate cake everyone loves. I'd been looking forward to it, honestly. For the first time in years, I had genuinely exciting news to share. Our Series A funding round was almost complete. 3 major fashion retailers were in talks for partnerships, and tech blogs were starting to notice us. Inc. magazine had featured StyleSync in their 10 startups to watch list just the week before. I should have known better. I should have remembered that my family's idea of success was Danny's car dealership, where he moved maybe 50 used vehicles a month and called himself an entrepreneur. I should have remembered that to them, real business meant something you could touch, something that made sense to people who thought the internet was still a fad that would eventually pass. The conversation started innocently enough. Jessica asked about work, and I made the mistake of being honest. Actually, things are going really well. We're about to close a major funding round, and there's serious acquisition interest from some huge companies. Acquisition interest? Uncle Frank practically choked on his ham. For what exactly? I took a breath and launched into my elevator pitch. StyleSync was revolutionizing how people interacted with their wardrobes. Our AI could analyze someone's entire closet, suggest outfits based on weather, occasion, and personal style preferences, track what they wore and when, and even recommend new purchases that would maximize their existing pieces. Users could photograph their clothes once, and our system would handle everything else. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Danny started laughing. Not chuckling, not smiling, but full-on belly laughing like I'd just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "You're telling me," he wheezed between laughs, "that people are going to pay money for an app to tell them what to wear? Riley, my 8-year-old daughter can pick out her own clothes." "It's more complex than that," I tried to explain. "The algorithms analyze fabric care instructions, color coordination, seasonal appropriateness, body type optimization, budget management." "Honey," Aunt Margaret interrupted with that patronizing voice she'd perfected over decades of dismissing anything she didn't immediately understand, "people have been getting dressed just fine for thousands of years without needing a computer to help them." That's when Uncle Frank chimed in with his expertise. "You know what real business looks like? Look at Danny here. Cars. People need cars. They can see them, touch them, drive them home. That's tangible value. This app thing you're doing, it's just playing around on computers." I felt my face getting hot. Frank, the global fashion tech market is worth over $12 billion. Amazon's recommendation engine alone generates 35% of their revenue using similar principles to what we've developed. But that's Amazon, Jessica said gently, like she was explaining something to a child. They're already huge. You're just, starting out. I've been working on this for 3 years. We have over 200,000 active users, enterprise clients, and partnerships in development with major retailers. Danny wiped his eyes, still recovering from his laughing fit. 200,000 people downloaded a free app? That doesn't mean you have a real business. How much money are you actually making? That was the question I'd been dreading. We were pre-revenue, focusing on user acquisition and platform development before monetization. In the tech world, this was completely normal. Facebook didn't turn a profit for years, neither did Twitter. But try explaining that to people who think profit means cash in hand at the end of each day. We're in the growth phase, I said carefully. The focus right now is building user base and refining the product before we implement our monetization strategy. More silence. Then Uncle Frank delivered the kill shot. So you're telling us you've been playing dress-up on computers for 3 years and you haven't made a single dollar? The rest of dinner was a blur of increasingly condescending comments disguised as concern. Maybe I should consider a backup plan. Maybe I should think about getting a real job while I was still young enough. Maybe I should stop wasting time on something that isn't going anywhere. By the time dessert rolled around, I was ready to scream. These people, who between them had never created anything more innovative than Danny's buy here, pay here financing scheme, were sitting there dismantling something they couldn't even comprehend. They saw an app and they thought it was just another phone game. They couldn't see the hundreds of hours of machine learning research, the user experience testing, the algorithm development, the market analysis, the competitive research. What really killed me was the look of pity in their eyes. Poor Riley, wasting her MIT computer science degree on a fantasy. Poor Riley, 28 years old and still playing around instead of settling down with a nice, stable job at a nice, stable company doing nice, stable work that Uncle Frank could explain to his golf buddies. I left that dinner feeling smaller than I had in years, not because I doubted my business. I knew the numbers, I knew the potential, I knew what we were building was revolutionary, but because for a few hours, I'd let myself see StyleSync through their eyes, a silly app for people too lazy to pick out their own clothes. That night, I called my business partner and co-founder, Marcus, who'd been handling the technical side while I focused on business development. "How's the acquisition talk going with Meridian?" I asked, needing something concrete to hold on to. "Actually, really well," he said. "They want to schedule an in-person meeting next week. Rebecca Walsh herself is flying out. Riley, I think this might actually happen." I hung up and sat in my apartment, surrounded by the whiteboards covered in user flow diagrams and market projections that my family would never understand. Tomorrow, I'd get back to work. Tomorrow, I'd prove them wrong. But tonight, I let myself feel the sting of being dismissed by the people who were supposed to support me no matter what. Little did I know that by Monday morning, everything would change. The Tuesday morning after Easter, I walked into our cramped office space above the Vietnamese restaurants on 5th Street with a determination that felt like fire in my chest. Marcus looked up from his dual monitor setup, surrounded by empty energy drink cans and the remnants of what appeared to be a weekend coding marathon. "You look like you're ready to conquer the world," he said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "How was family dinner?" I dropped my bag on my desk and pulled up our analytics dashboard. Let's just say I have extra motivation to make sure Meridian's offer is everything we hoped for. What I didn't tell Marcus was that I'd spent most of Monday night doing something I hadn't done in months, diving deep into our competitor analysis. Not because I doubted our product, but because I needed to see with absolute clarity just how far ahead we really were. I needed ammunition for the acquisition meeting that would shut down every criticism my family had lobbed at me. The research was staggering. Our closest competitor, a startup called WardrobeWise, had just been acquired by a major department store chain for $42 million. Their active user base was less than half of ours. Their engagement metrics were abysmal compared to StyleSync's numbers. Their AI accuracy rates were hovering around 63%, while our machine learning algorithms were consistently hitting 91% accuracy in outfit recommendations. But what really caught my attention was the gap in the market that nobody else was addressing. Every other fashion tech company was focusing on selling clothes or basic organization. We were the only ones using genuine artificial intelligence to understand personal style evolution, predict fashion trends, and create what amounted to a personal stylist that learned and adapted to each user's preferences. I pulled up our user retention data. The average fashion app loses 80% of its users within the first month. StyleSync's retention rate after 3 months was 74%. People weren't just downloading our app and forgetting about it. They were integrating it into their daily routines. They were depending on it. Then I looked at our most recent user feedback surveys. The comments weren't just positive, they were revelatory. StyleSync helped me discover my personal style for the first time in my life. I save an hour every morning and feel more confident than ever. This app knows my wardrobe better than I do. I bought fewer clothes but love everything in my closet now. These weren't people playing dress-up games on their phones. These were working professionals, busy parents, people with real lives who found genuine value in what we'd created. The data showed users were saving an average of 37 minutes per day on clothing decisions, increasing their outfit satisfaction ratings by 49% and reducing their clothing purchases by 23% while improving their overall style confidence. Marcus wandered over to my desk with a fresh cup of coffee. Find something interesting? Did you know that our user base includes 15,000 small business owners, 22,000 teachers, 38,000 healthcare workers, and 47,000 corporate executives? He raised an eyebrow. I know we serve diverse demographics, but those are specific numbers. I spent last night breaking down our user data by profession, income, location, and usage patterns. I turned my screen toward him. Look at this. Our highest engagement rates come from people in leadership positions, CEOs, department heads, entrepreneurs, people who understand that time is money and presentation matters. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family saw StyleSync as frivolous, our actual users included people running companies, managing teams, making decisions that affected thousands of employees. These weren't people who had time to waste on silly apps. Wednesday brought news that shifted everything into higher gear. Rebecca Walsh's assistant called to confirm the Friday meeting and mentioned they'd be bringing their entire acquisition team, not just Walsh, but their head of technology, their strategic planning director, and their financial analyst. This wasn't a preliminary conversation anymore. This was serious evaluation. I spent Wednesday and Thursday preparing like my life depended on it. Not just the standard pitch deck and financial projections, but a comprehensive demonstration of exactly what our technology could do. Marcus and I worked 18-hour days building a custom demo that would showcase our AI's capabilities in real time. We programmed the system to analyze a theoretical wardrobe of a busy executive, showing how StyleSync could optimize their professional image, suggest appropriate attire for different types of meetings, and even predict which outfit combinations would photograph best for media appearances. We included data showing how our recommendations could influence perception, confidence, and ultimately professional success. But the breakthrough moment came Thursday evening when I was reviewing our corporate client pipeline. 3 months ago, I'd had initial conversations with HR departments at several Fortune 500 companies about enterprise versions of StyleSync. At the time, I'd filed those discussions under future opportunities and focused on our consumer growth. Now, looking at those notes with fresh eyes, I realized I'd been sitting on a goldmine. These companies weren't interested in StyleSync as an employee perk. They were interested in it as a professional development tool. They'd specifically asked about features that could help employees dress appropriately for client meetings, international business travel, industry conferences, and leadership presentations. I called the head of human resources at Morrison Consulting, one of the companies that had expressed the strongest interest. Janet Reeves answered on the second ring. Riley, I was just thinking about you. We've been discussing your app in our executive meetings. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to follow up on our conversation about the enterprise version. Oh, the timing is perfect. We just got approval for a pilot program. We want to offer Style Sync to our top-tier consultants as a professional development resource. These people are charging clients $500 an hour for their expertise, but half of them show up to meetings dressed like they shop exclusively at discount stores. My heart started racing. What kind of scale are we talking about? Initially, about 300 users across our senior consulting staff. If the pilot goes well, we'd roll it out to our entire professional services division. That's roughly 1,200 people. 1,200 enterprise users at Morrison alone?
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I thought about the other companies that had expressed interest. Goldman Sachs had asked about a version for their wealth management division. Accenture wanted something for their client-facing consultants. Price Waterhouse had inquired about professional image consulting for their audit teams. Janet, would you be available for a brief call Friday afternoon? I'm meeting with some potential investors, and having a concrete enterprise client commitment would be incredibly valuable. Absolutely. Email me the details. I hung up and immediately started calculating. If we could secure even half of the enterprise clients in our pipeline, we'd be looking at 10,000 professional users within the first year. At the enterprise pricing model we'd discussed, that was recurring annual revenue of over $8 million just from the B2B side. Friday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy I hadn't felt since defending my thesis at MIT. I dressed in my most confident outfit, a combination that StyleSync had suggested based on the psychological impact of color and cut in high-stakes professional meetings. Navy blazer for trustworthiness, crisp white shirt for competence, a subtle red accessory for confidence and authority. Marcus met me at the office early to run through our demo one final time. Everything was perfect. Our presentation flowed seamlessly, our technology performed flawlessly, and our financial projections were conservative but compelling. At 8:45, I got a text message from an unknown number. Good luck today, Riley. Knock 'em dead. Your old roommate Sarah saw the Inc. magazine article and sent it to me. So proud of you. It was from Dr. Jennifer Morrison, my favorite computer science professor from MIT. She'd been the one who encouraged me to pursue machine learning applications in consumer technology. She'd also been the one who told me that the best entrepreneurs were the ones who could see potential where others saw problems. At exactly 9:15, the elevator doors opened and 3 people in matching navy suits stepped into our lobby. Rebecca Walsh was smaller in person than I'd expected, but she carried herself with the kind of presence that commanded attention immediately. Behind her, a tall man with silver hair and a woman about my age with a tablet tucked under her arm. Miss Chen, Rebecca said, extending her hand with a smile that seemed genuinely warm. I'm Rebecca Walsh from Meridian Capital. Thank you for making time for us today. I shook her hand and felt something I hadn't experienced since that Easter dinner conversation. Respect. Not tolerance, not politeness, but genuine professional respect from someone who understood exactly what we'd built and why it mattered. The pleasure is entirely ours, I replied, leading them toward our conference room. I think you're going to be very impressed with what we've accomplished. As we walked past the whiteboards covered in algorithms and user flow diagrams, I caught Rebecca glancing at them with interest rather than confusion. This wasn't Uncle Frank trying to figure out why people needed computers to help them get dressed. This was someone who understood technology, market potential, and scalable business models. For the first time since Easter dinner, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The presentation lasted exactly 47 minutes, not because we rushed, but because Rebecca Walsh and her team were so engaged that they kept asking questions that led us deeper into the technology than I'd planned to go. When Marcus demonstrated our machine learning algorithm analyzing a sample wardrobe in real time, adjusting recommendations based on weather patterns, calendar events, and personal style preferences, the woman with the tablet actually leaned forward and whispered something to the silver-haired man. The enterprise applications alone could be transformative, Rebecca said, studying our user retention charts. Walk me through the Morrison Consulting pilot program again. I pulled up the corporate client pipeline on our main screen. Morrison is just the beginning. We have preliminary agreements in place with 6 Fortune 500 companies for enterprise trials. The total addressable market in professional services alone is worth over $3 billion annually. $3 billion, the silver-haired man repeated, making notes. And your current user acquisition cost is? $14 per user, with an average lifetime value of $237 on the consumer side. For enterprise users, we're projecting lifetime value of over $1,500 per seat. Rebecca exchanged glances with her team. Ms. Chen, I'm going to be direct with you. We came here today expecting to discuss a potential partnership or maybe a small acquisition to integrate your technology into our existing platform. What we're seeing is something much more significant. My heart started beating faster. How do you mean? We're looking at a complete market disruption. Your AI doesn't just recommend clothes, it's creating behavioral insights, predictive analytics, and user engagement patterns that could revolutionize retail technology across multiple sectors. The fashion application is just the entry point. The woman with the tablet spoke for the first time. I'm Sandra Kim, Head of Technology Integration at Meridian. Your machine learning framework could be adapted for home design, travel planning, professional development, even healthcare applications. The core technology is platform agnostic. Marcus and I looked at each other. We'd built StyleSync to solve one specific problem, but they were seeing potential we'd never fully considered. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Rebecca stood up and walked to our window overlooking 5th Street. Full acquisition. We want to bring StyleSync into Meridian's portfolio as the foundation for a new artificial intelligence division. You'd maintain operational control, but with our resources, infrastructure, and market access. And the number? Marcus asked quietly. $85 million, cash and equity. Immediate payment of $65 million, with the remaining $20 million tied to performance milestones over the next 2 years. The room went completely silent. I stared at Rebecca, certain I'd misheard. $85 million for the app my family had spent Easter dinner mocking as a waste of time. I need to make a phone call, I said, my voice barely steady. I stepped into the hallway and dialed Janet Reeves at Morrison Consulting. She answered immediately. Riley, perfect timing. I just got off a call with our executive committee. They approved the enterprise pilot and they want to expand the scope. Instead of 300 users, they want to roll it out to our entire consulting division immediately. 1,200 users, annual subscription model. Can you handle that scale? Yes, I managed to say. Absolutely. Janet, I have Meridian Capital here for an acquisition meeting. Would you be willing to speak with them directly about the enterprise commitment? Put them on speaker. I'll tell them exactly what StyleSync means to our business. I walked back into the conference room where Rebecca and her team were having quiet discussions. Rebecca, I have Janet Reeves from Morrison Consulting on the line. She'd like to speak with you about their enterprise implementation. For the next 10 minutes, Janet detailed Morrison's plans to use StyleSync as a professional development tool, explaining how proper presentation was directly tied to client retention and business development in the consulting world. She mentioned specific revenue projections tied to improved client confidence and discussed expansion possibilities to their international offices. When the call ended, Sandra Kim was taking furious notes. Ms. Chen, do you have signed letters of intent from these enterprise clients? Not yet, but I can have them by Monday. Get them, Rebecca said, because we're prepared to increase our offer to $95 million based on the enterprise pipeline alone. $95 million. I thought about Danny laughing at Easter dinner, about Uncle Frank dismissing my business as playing around on computers, about Aunt Wergrit's patronizing voice explaining that people had been getting dressed just fine for thousands of years. We'll need our attorneys to review the terms, I said, trying to sound professional while my hands were shaking. Of course, my team will send over the preliminary agreement this afternoon. We'd like to close within 30 days if possible. After they left, Marcus and I sat in our conference room in stunned silence. Finally, he started laughing. Not Danny's dismissive laughter, but pure joy and disbelief. $95 million, Riley. Do you realize what just happened? I picked up my phone and scrolled to Danny's contact information. Then I stopped. Not yet. First, I needed to make this official. The next week moved like a whirlwind. Lawyers, due diligence, technical audits, financial reviews. Meridian's team was thorough but efficient. They wanted StyleSync, and they wanted it fast. The enterprise clients signed their letters of intent exactly as promised. Morrison, Goldman Sachs, Accenture, Pricewaterhouse, and 3 others committed to pilot programs worth over $12 million in first-year revenue. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday. The night before, I sat in my apartment looking at the final contract. $95 million for a company I'd built from scratch that my family had called a joke just 3 weeks ago. I picked up my phone and called Jessica. "Riley, how are you? I was just thinking about you after Easter dinner. I hope we didn't come across as too harsh. We're just worried about you, you know?" "Jessica, is everyone coming to Mom's for Sunday dinner this week?" "Of course. Why?" "I have some news to share. Can you make sure Danny and Uncle Frank are there?" "Sure, but Riley, if this is about that app thing again, maybe we should just make sure they're there." Sunday afternoon, I walked into Aunt Margaret's house carrying a bottle of champagne and a folder of documents. The same people were gathered around the same table, discussing Danny's latest car sales and Uncle Frank's golf game. "Riley," Aunt Margaret hugged me, "how nice to see you again so soon. How's work going?" "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about." I pulled out the acquisition agreement and placed it on the table. StyleSync was acquired this week by Meridian Capital for $95 million. The room went dead silent. Danny stopped chewing his sandwich. Uncle Frank's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. $95 million? Jessica whispered. "The same app you called a joke 3 weeks ago? The one Uncle Frank said wasn't a real business? The one Danny laughed at for helping people pick out their clothes?" I opened the folder and spread out the enterprise client agreements. Morrison Consulting is paying us $12,000 per month for professional styling services for their executive team. Goldman Sachs wants to license our technology for their wealth management division. Accenture is implementing our platform across their global consulting network. Uncle Frank was staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. This is real? The money hits my account Monday morning, $65 million immediate payment with performance bonuses that could bring the total to over $100 million within 2 years. Danny cleared his throat. "Riley, I had no idea. When you explained it at Easter, it sounded like..." "Like what, Danny? Like a silly game? Like playing dress-up on computers?" "I didn't understand the technology," he said quietly. "You didn't try to understand it. None of you did. You heard app and decided it wasn't serious business." I looked around the table at their shocked faces. "The same AI technology you dismissed is being used by Fortune 500 companies to train their executives, improve their professional image, and increase their client retention rates." Aunt Margaret spoke up hesitantly. "Honey, we had no way of knowing." "You had every way of knowing. You could have asked questions instead of making jokes. You could have looked at the data I tried to show you. You could have trusted that maybe, just maybe, someone with an MIT computer science degree might know what she's talking about." I stood up and gathered my documents. "I wanted you all to know because you're family, and I thought you'd want to celebrate with me. But I also wanted you to understand something. The next time someone in this family has an idea that doesn't make immediate sense to you, maybe try listening instead of laughing." Jessica followed me to the door. "Riley, we're sorry. We really are. We just didn't understand." "I know you didn't understand, but the problem wasn't your lack of understanding. The problem was your certainty that because you didn't understand something, it must not be valuable." I drove home thinking about the past month. 3 weeks ago, I'd left this same house feeling diminished and doubtful. Today, I was leaving as the co-founder of a company worth nearly $100 million. The technology hadn't changed, the market opportunity hadn't changed. The only thing that had changed was that now I had a number they could understand. Monday morning, I sat in the same conference room where Rebecca Walsh had first walked into my life, watching the wire transfer confirmation appear on my laptop screen. $65 million. The first installment of an acquisition that would transform not just my life, but everything I thought I knew about taking risks and trusting my instincts. Marcus knocked on my door. "Riley, there's someone here to see you." I looked up to see Danny standing in our lobby, holding a small gift bag. "I brought you something," he said awkwardly. "It's a bottle of champagne, the good stuff." I invited him into my office. He looked around at the whiteboards covered in algorithms, the user analytics displays, the enterprise client projections. I owe you an apology, he said finally. A real one. I was an ass at Easter dinner. You were. I've been thinking about it all week. You know what the difference is between you and me? I waited. You built something nobody had ever seen before. I just sell things other people made. You created value from nothing. You saw a problem that millions of people had and figured out how to solve it using technology I don't even understand. He paused. That's not playing around. That's genius. After he left, I sat alone in my office thinking about the phone call I'd gotten that morning from Dr. Morrison, my old MIT professor. She'd seen the acquisition announcement in TechCrunch. Riley, she'd said, do you remember what I told you about the best entrepreneurs? That they see potential where others see problems? No, that's what I tell everyone. What I told you specifically is that the best entrepreneurs are the ones who trust their vision even when the people they love don't understand it, especially when the people they love don't understand it. She was right. The hardest part of building StyleSync hadn't been the technology or the market research or the funding rounds. It had been believing in something that the people closest to me couldn't see. It had been trusting my own judgment when everyone else's certainty made me question everything. But here's what I learned. Innovation always looks impossible until it's inevitable. 3 weeks ago, my family couldn't imagine why anyone would pay for an app to help them get dressed. Today, that same app is the foundation of a $95 million acquisition by one of the largest tech investment firms in the country. The people who matter will understand eventually. The ones who don't understand might never understand, but that's not your problem to solve. Your job is to build something so undeniably valuable that even the skeptics have to admit they were wrong. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to watch them eat their words with a side of $95 million. 6 months after the acquisition closed, I found myself standing in front of a room full of Stanford MBA students, delivering a guest lecture on artificial intelligence applications in consumer technology. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now the expert everyone wanted to hear from, when just months earlier, my own family had dismissed my work as frivolous computer games. The biggest mistake entrepreneurs make, I told the class, isn't technical. It's not market research or funding or even product development. It's letting other people's inability to see your vision convince you that the vision isn't real. A student in the front row raised her hand. But how do you distinguish between legitimate criticism and ignorance? How do you know when to listen and when to ignore feedback? It was a question I'd been grappling with long before StyleSync became a household name. The acquisition had been just the beginning. Under Meridian's umbrella, we'd expanded into 12 different market sectors, developed partnerships with over 200 enterprise clients, and launched subsidiary applications for home design, travel planning, and professional development. Our user base had grown from 200,000 to over 15 million people worldwide. Ask yourself this, I replied to the student. Is the criticism coming from someone who understands your market, your technology, and your target demographic? Or is it coming from someone who's projecting their own limitations onto your idea? The truth was, I'd learned to differentiate between valuable feedback and noise through some painful trial and error. When venture capitalists questioned our monetization strategy, I listened because they understood scalable business models. When fashion industry executives suggested partnerships, I paid attention because they knew the retail landscape. But when Uncle Frank declared that nobody would pay for wardrobe advice, I should have recognized that as the opinion of someone who shopped exclusively at discount stores and wore the same 3 polo shirts in rotation. After the lecture, I drove back to our new headquarters in Palo Alto. Meridian had relocated us from that cramped office above the Vietnamese restaurant to a 40,000 square foot innovation campus with dedicated AI research labs, user experience testing facilities, and workspace for over 300 employees. Walking through the lobby, past walls covered with patents, industry awards, and feature articles from major publications, I sometimes had to remind myself that this was real. Marcus met me in my office with news that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Netflix wants to license our recommendation algorithm for their content platform. They're offering $15 million for a 3-year exclusive deal in the entertainment sector. $15 million just for licensing our core technology? Apparently, our machine learning framework is sophisticated enough to predict user preferences across any category of choices, not just clothing. They've been testing it on viewing patterns, and the accuracy rates are off the charts. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about the evolution of what we'd built. StyleSync had started as a solution to a personal problem. I'd been frustrated with my own closet, tired of standing in front of a wardrobe full of clothes and feeling like I had nothing to wear. The AI was originally designed to help people like me maximize what they already owned while developing a coherent personal style. But the technology had grown beyond its original application because the underlying problem was universal. Whether people were choosing clothes, movies, restaurants, or vacation destinations, they wanted personalized recommendations that learned from their preferences and improved over time. We'd accidentally built the foundation for next-generation consumer AI. The validation felt surreal. Not just financial validation, though the numbers were certainly impressive. By the end of our first year under Meridian, StyleSync's technology was generating over $200 million in annual revenue across multiple applications. But the real validation came from seeing how our work was genuinely improving people's lives. I got emails daily from users who credited StyleSync with helping them land job interviews, feel confident in social situations, or simply save time in their morning routines. Teachers wrote about how our professional styling features helped them command respect in parent-teacher conferences. Recent graduates shared stories about using our interview mode to nail job interviews at competitive companies. Small business owners explained how our personal branding tools had improved their client relationships and referral rates. These weren't people playing dress-up games. These were professionals, parents, students, and entrepreneurs who found real value in technology that helped them present their best selves to the world. The fact that my family had initially dismissed this need said more about their limited perspective than it did about market demand. The hardest part of success, I discovered, wasn't the technical challenges or business development. It was navigating relationships with people who'd been skeptical from the beginning. Danny had become somewhat of a supporter, even referring potential enterprise clients from his business network. But Uncle Frank remained convinced that StyleSync's success was just a lucky fluke, and Aunt Margaret still introduced me as her niece who'd gotten lucky with some computer thing. The dynamic that surprised me most was with Jessica. She'd started using StyleSync herself after the acquisition announcement, and she'd become genuinely enthusiastic about the platform. But there was an underlying tension in our conversations, as if she resented not having been supportive when it mattered. "I wish you'd explained it better at Easter," she said during a family gathering in the fall. "If we'd understood what you were really building, we would have been more encouraging." "I tried to explain it," I reminded her. "You weren't interested in understanding it. But you made it sound so complicated with all that talk about machine learning and algorithms. You should have just said it was like having a personal stylist on your phone." That conversation crystallized something I'd been thinking about for months. The problem hadn't been my ability to explain StyleSync. The problem had been their unwillingness to consider that something they didn't immediately understand might still be valuable. They'd wanted me to reduce a sophisticated AI platform to terms they could grasp in 30 seconds. And when I couldn't do that, they'd concluded the idea itself was worthless. It reminded me of a conversation I'd had with Rebecca Walsh during the acquisition process. She'd asked about my family's reaction to the business, and I'd admitted they'd been skeptical. "That's actually a good sign," she'd said. "True innovation usually looks crazy to people who think conventionally. If your family had immediately understood and supported your idea, it probably wouldn't have been revolutionary enough to interest us." The perspective shift was liberating. Instead of seeing their initial skepticism as a personal failure, I began to understand it as evidence that I'd been working on something genuinely disruptive. Revolutionary ideas are supposed to seem impossible to people who think in conventional terms. By the following spring, StyleSync had expanded internationally, with localized versions launching in 37 countries. Our enterprise division was serving over 500 companies, from small consulting firms to multinational corporations. The consumer platform had integrated with major retailers, allowing users to purchase recommended items directly through the app while maintaining our core focus on maximizing existing wardrobes. The success attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Harvard Business School developed a case study around our growth strategy. MIT invited me to join their entrepreneurship advisory board. The World Economic Forum selected StyleSync as one of the year's most innovative technology companies. But the moment that felt most satisfying came during a family birthday party for my grandmother that summer. The conversation naturally turned to my work, as it often did, now that people could no longer pretend it wasn't significant. "Riley's become quite the celebrity," Aunt Margaret announced to some family friends who joined us. "She sold her little computer business for nearly $100 million. It wasn't a little computer business, I corrected gently. It's an artificial intelligence platform that serves 15 million users worldwide and generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue across multiple market sectors. Uncle Frank, who'd been unusually quiet during recent family gatherings, finally spoke up. "I have to admit, Riley, I was wrong about your business. I thought it was just some phone app nonsense." "It was never just a phone app, Frank, but I understand why it seemed that way to you. What made you so sure it would work when nobody else could see it?" The question caught me off guard because it forced me to articulate something I'd never fully examined. "I wasn't sure it would work this well," I said honestly, "but I was sure the problem was real because I experienced it myself. And I was sure our solution was better than anything else available because I understood the technology behind it." "But we experience lots of problems that don't turn into million-dollar businesses," Jessica pointed out. "True, but most people experience problems and either accept them or look for existing solutions. Entrepreneurs experience problems and ask whether they can build better solutions. The difference isn't the problem itself. It's the willingness to believe you can solve it in a way that nobody has before." That conversation helped me understand why StyleSync had succeeded despite early skepticism. I'd never been trying to convince my family that wardrobe organization was important. I'd been trying to solve a genuine problem using advanced technology, and I'd been confident enough in both the problem and the solution to persist through criticism. The key insight was that validation doesn't come from getting everyone to understand your vision immediately. It comes from building something so undeniably valuable that even the skeptics eventually have to acknowledge its worth. Some people will understand your idea right away. Others will understand it once they see it working, and some will never understand it, but that's not your problem to solve. Looking back now, I'm grateful for that Easter dinner conversation, painful as it was at the time. It taught me to trust my own judgment, even when people I care about can't see what I see. It showed me the difference between legitimate criticism and uninformed skepticism, and it gave me the motivation to prove that big ideas don't need universal approval to succeed. Today, StyleSync continues to evolve under Meridian's leadership, while I've moved on to my next venture, an AI platform for personalized education that's already attracting acquisition interest from major technology companies. And yes, my family is supportive this time around, though I suspect that has more to do with my track record than with their improved understanding of educational technology. The biggest lesson I learned from building StyleSync isn't about artificial intelligence or consumer applications or even entrepreneurship. It's about the importance of believing in your own vision strongly enough to persist through doubt, criticism, and skepticism. Innovation always looks impossible until it becomes inevitable. Your job isn't to convince everyone that your idea will work. Your job is to make it work so well that even the doubters have to admit they were wrong. Sometimes the people who can't see your vision become your biggest supporters once you prove them wrong. Sometimes they continue to minimize your success even after it's undeniable. But either way, their opinion of your idea says more about their limitations than it does about your potential. The notification that hit my phone at 3:47 p.m. on that Tuesday wasn't just an acquisition offer. It was proof that believing in yourself, even when nobody else does, can literally change your life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it changes the lives of millions of other people too. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.